My second question is about credit cards and money. And I have a good job now, and I have some credit cards, and I find that I've been doing your debt release process, and I enjoy it, and I like, coming to the point of the month where I pay off my credit card, where I pay my credit cards, and I pay, more than double on some, and I pay a lot more than double on others, and some I pay down completely, and then by the end of the month, then I've charged it back up again, pretty much to the limit. And so I've been doing this for about 9 months, and it's funny because I enjoy what I spend things on, and it's something that I feel really aligned with when I buy it usually. But then I still feel like I have this, I feel like I'm digging myself a hole, and so there's that negative piece of it. So there's pieces of it that feel really good, but then there's this other piece that doesn't, and I was hoping for some soothing words there too.
Well, what you're really looking for is that balance, which is the same thing as alignment that we've been talking about, in fact, just now. So the reason that this releasing debt game is effective for a lot of people is, do you know the game? Yeah. What the game is you make a columnar pad and you list what you are paying by the month, and then from the largest one over here to smaller, or other way around, whatever pleases you, and then you just make a decision that you will start with the one that is smallest and double your payment. And in time, you release the columns until you're using your credit cards for convenience rather than for financial loan. Mm-hmm. But the reason that the game is effective is because often, for many people, it causes them to approach the payment of bills in a playful way rather than in a worrisome way. It brings them to a place of anticipating going to the mailbox or anticipating the process of paying the bills rather than dreading it. So it shifts the mood so that even though you're essentially going through the same process, you're still extending credit to yourself and then paying it off later. You do it in an attitude of control and therefore alignment rather than something else feeling like it is controlling you. Okay. Anything that you can say to yourself that makes you feel better as you approach it. In other words, you could take your current existing debt and you could trouble yourself with it by saying it is more than it should be, or it's more than it has been. And in doing so, in focusing in that way, on that end of that wave, so to speak, you can bring yourself out of the vortex. Or you could focus upon the exact same situation and say to yourself, there are many large organizations that operate completely on debt. There are many corporations that have learned to operate on other people's money. There is nothing inherently inappropriate about debt, especially debt when it is managed, and you can bring yourself into alignment. So it's not the fact of the debt, it's actually not the fact of anything. It's not the fact of any reality. And that's why we're not encouraging action or really so much attention to reality. It is the thought and the resultant energy alignment or misalignment that comes about that really is what creating is about. Do you know, you could have 10 times the debt you do, and if you were not worried about it, you could not hold 10 times the debt. In other words, the ratio of abundance would always be proportionate to the debt. When you worry about the debt gets bigger and gets out of balance. When you're not worried, but understanding the value of the debt, now the ratio of the money in and out comes more into balance. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
You see what we are talking about?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of people, it usually starts early in your life, who say, you need to do the appropriate thing, and then they tell you their version of the appropriate thing. And then you try to contour your behavior to their version of the appropriate thing. So, for example, a parent would say, don't go into debt or don't spend more money than you have. Where we would say to you, don't spend more money than your escrow. Don't spend more money than your escrow, which means don't spend more than your credit limit. Don't spend your escrow limit, not your credit limit. Don't spend more than your escrow. And by that we mean, when you see, through life, you have known what you don't want and known what you do want. You've built up a currency. It's why we are using the financial term, even as we use the word vibrational escrow. You have built up a reserve of well-being that is being held for you, and all cooperative components have been assembled. And as long as you're not behaving in a way that keeps you away from that, you must thrive. So it's that balance that you're reaching for. It's not the behavior. In the same way that it's not the food you eat, it's the way you feel when you eat it. It's not the words you say, it's what you feel when you say them. It's not the money in your bank account, it's how you feel as you spend it. And what credit has done is credit has allowed you a real life opportunity to understand what escrow really is, how there is some currency that is not manifested that is in your bank account. We are not ever encouraging anyone to get out of balance financially. In fact, it's a big conversation that Jerry and Esther have had even about these cruises, because they know that it is an expensive proposition. By the time you get yourself there and buy your ticket, they know that there is a lot of money that is changing hands in order for you to participate. It's why they offer gatherings of all kinds, some that are land-based. It's why they try to get to the city where you are so that there's not travel. It's why they put so much on the website and in the quarterly journal. They want people to be able to participate in this work at whatever level they are comfortable with in participating. But everyone must find their way. Jerry and Esther and Abraham, none of us would say it is essential that you spend the money and come on a cruise, or spend the money and come to a seminar to find value, because there is value in every particle of the universe. In other words, they want you to do what feels good to you. And if ever something that you are doing doesn't feel good in the spending of money, then you're out of balance. But your trouble is not because of what you're spending, it's because of what you're feeling. It's the vibrational imbalance that is the concern, not the financial imbalance. Because when you are vibrationally in balance, there can be no financial imbalance. You cannot sustain a financial imbalance, a physical relative to your body imbalance, or a relationship imbalance. You cannot sustain one if you have this emotional balance. It is everything.
Can you speak more about that credit relating to your vibrational escrow, and how do you know if you've overspent your, or how do you know where that balance is?
Well, you feel uncomfortable and aren't able to easily bring yourself into alignment about it. In other words, when you have a sort of chronic concern, you've gone too far. But the thing that's tricky about it is that people think, well, give me the money and then I'll have a better feeling response to the money. Or give me the money to spend even though I don't actually have the money, and then I will have a better feeling response to the better life that I am living. And that's why what we're talking about is about bringing yourself into alignment anyway. It's about making peace with where you are. Really, we would say this to anyone, no matter what their ratio of income and debt is, of asset and liability. We would say to anyone, if you can put your emphasis for a little while on your understanding of your emotions and this vortex, you have to come into alignment no matter what the subject is. So we never worry about anyone, no matter how much debt they have, because, now hear it, in the context of what we've been saying already here today, this is a wonderful thing to recognize and ponder until it is a vibration that you own, or in other words, know. And that is, what was the terminology that we were offering earlier about this? That as a problem is festering, so is a solution. So as an illness is coming into focus, so is the healing or the wellness. And as debt is coming into focus, so is the ability to pay it. Because the other side of the wave exists. But if, because of your predisposition to worry about illness, or to worry about money, or to worry about anything holds you in a reactive to now reality stance, then it just gets worse and worse and worse, because there you are worried about it, gets worse. There you are worried about it, gets worse. There you are really worried about it, it gets worse. But when you acknowledge that as this is growing, so is this, take the bounce from the wave, and you're wise enough to focus in the direction of what feels good to you, now that debt serves you well. Because here's the best story we have about this. A woman was concerned. Her current husband had an ex-wife. And her current husband was a very good earner. And every time he earned more, his ex-wife went to the court and petitioned for more money. So it felt to the woman that we were visiting with that her husband could never really get ahead financially, because every time he got a little more, she took it, or a lot of it. And she wanted to know what we thought about it, because she felt such injustice at this woman and those former children who were siphoning off so much good stuff from her current financial relationship. And she wanted to know what we thought. And we said, we would like it if he had 10 such ex-wives. She was appalled. How could that be? One was treacherous enough. We said, think about it. She only gets 50% of what he earns. And so if he earns $100,000 and she gets 50, you have 50. But if he has 10 of them calling money through him, now he has $1 million. He has 500,000, they have 500,000. In other words, it works out really good for you. Are you getting what we're getting at? In other words, the more that your life calls through you that in the beginning looks problematic, the more solutions are formulating over here. And so the key is to get focused in the direction of the solution. And so if we were standing in your physical shoes, rather than speaking of debt, we would talk about the calling that has called so much abundance into your vortex, and your readiness to allow it in now. And we would feel appreciation of anything that put any of that good stuff there.
Would you be willing to do a rampage on that? Because I'm going to need to be really strong in my vibration when I get home.
Before we turn you back into the wild?
Yes, please.
Before we are finished, we'll rampage on a few things, yes.
Okay.